This is a review video for the final exam, and so I'm just going to start off with reviewing some questions with order of operations. So as a reminder, for order of operations, your first priority would be to do parentheses, and then next you would do exponents, and then multiplication or division, whichever one you come to, addition and subtraction. And we always work left to right. So you just follow that and you just do everything as you go. So let's start with this first example. So this is an expression. So since it's an expression, I put an equal sign below it and to the left so that I can just keep working vertically here. So we look at everything in here. Now there are parentheses here, but there's nothing to do inside. So when we say parentheses, we're talking about doing anything inside, and this is just a 6, so it's already done. So then I look, and next would be exponents. So here's an exponent. And so we remember that 8 squared, or 8 to the second, means 8 times 8. So that would be 64. And then we can do one thing at a time here, or if we remember, addition and subtraction are last, which means that I can kind of do this stuff that's in between them next. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to do, because multiplication and division are next, so I'm going to do minus 12 plus, and then I'm going to do the 45 divided by 5, because the last thing I'll do is this addition and subtraction. 45 divided by 5 is 9. And then you would just simply work left to right. So 64 minus 12, which would be 52. And then you still have plus 9. And so then you end up with 61. All right, same thing applies when you have expressions that happen to have variables in it. We still follow order of operations and go through and do everything working left to right. So this is just an expression. There's no equal sign. So put your equal sign down here, and then we'll just work on simplifying things. So we see that we have parentheses, but inside the parentheses, these are not like terms. We have x and a 2, and they're not alike, so that just has to stay x minus 2. So then we're going to do this multiplication, which will be the distributive property. However, we want to be careful here because this is subtraction and we don't want to make a mistake on our signs. So we're going to want to change this subtraction to add the opposite. And I would go ahead and change this one to add the opposite to make sure that we don't make a mistake on our signs. So now I'm not doing anything with 7x. It's just going to stay there. But I am going to go ahead then and distribute, and then I'm going to put the plus here and then just do my distributing. So remember, you can draw arrows or you cannot draw arrows. It depends on whether you're keeping track of it well. So the arrow means that I need to do negative 4 times x. So that's negative 4x, and then I have a plus sign. So I'm going to put plus. And then I take negative 4 times negative 2, which is positive 8, and then go ahead and write the plus 5 that's on the end. Now, I just keep going through until there's nothing else I can do. So I look at all my terms, and here I have like terms. These two terms are alike, so they can be added. They're both x terms. So I have 7x plus a negative 4x. So that's 3x. And then these two terms are alike. They're both just constants. So then that will be plus 13. So that's a good review of your order of operations. Now we're going to review finding the least common denominator before we get into solving, because some of our solving requires us to work with fractions. So I wanted to review that whole process that we have for least common denominator. So to find the least common denominator, our process is to first factor all the denominators. Okay, so we factor the denominators. And then our second step to find the least common denominator is we take the product of all of the factors but then remember, sometimes we had repeated factors. Each number had a factor in common. So if they do, we use the highest power of any repeated factor. So we'll see that in these examples. Okay, and that's going to be your least common denominator. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 and we're going to write it as factors, and we're going to take 12 and do the same thing. So 10 really doesn't have any choices if I want to do factors that aren't 1 times. So it's going to be 2 times 5. And that's the only way to get 10 other than 1 times 10. For 12, there's more than one option. So remember, we had factor trees that we could do, or you take 12 and you take any product that's 12. So I'm going to take 2 times 6, and then I keep factoring until those numbers don't factor. So 6 is 2 times 3. That means that 12 is 2 times 2 times 3, and we write 2 times 2 as 2 squared times 3. So there are my factors for my numbers. So 10 is 2 times 5, 12 is 2 squared times 3. The least common denominator, I want to use all of these factors. Okay, so I need a 2, a 3, and a 5. The 2 is a repeated factor because it's here in both of these numbers. So I'm going to use the highest power, which is squared. So I will do 2 squared times 3 times 5. 2 squared is 4 times 3 times 5. 4 times 3 is 12 times 5. 12 times 5 is 60. So that means the least common denominator is 60. That's the smallest number that both 10 and 12 will go into. The smallest thing they both divide into. Okay, so let's do the next one. So we're going to do 30 and we're going to do 35. Well, they're going to take a little bit of work with factor trees. So over here to the side, out of the way, I'm going to do my factor tree. So for 30, I can pick anything I want. I just thought of 3 times 10. And then 10 we know is 2 times 5. And now we're finished because these are all prime numbers. So there's no more factors that we can do there. So then let's do 35. And 35 is 5 times 7, and 5 and 7 are both prime, so I can't do anything else. So we're going to write 30, and I'm going to write them in order smallest to largest, just so it's easier to see what factors we have in case there's some in common. So it's 2 times 3 times 5, and 35 is 5 times 7. So we do have one repeated factor right here. So on a repeated factor, we use the highest power. Well, the highest power is a 1 here. So our least common denominator, we need every factor. So we need a 2, we need the 3, we need the 5, which again is repeated, but it's the same power. So we just need the 5, and then we need a 7. And that's going to be our least common denominator. So now we can do multiplication to figure out what that is. And remember, we can multiply in any order that we want. So you can do it straight left to right. You can do whatever you want. We'll just go left to right. 2 times 3 is 6. And then we'll have 6 times 5 times 7 then. 6 times 5 is 30. So 30 times 7, 30 times 7 is 210. So that's all I'm going to do on this video. So a review of order of operations and least common denominators. So continue with the other videos when you're done going over this one.